I am Geoff Eido. This is Lunacy, where we discern the sacred from the insane and admit that whether we like it or not, we are all profoundly affected by the cycles of the moon. How? My guest today is my very good friend and brother, Sterling Hawkins, author of the book Hunting Discomfort, a public speaker and proponent of a no matter what life. I'm super excited to have you on the program. Sterling was actually my first guest on the podcast, and now we're back again several months later. We got 20 episodes in the bag, in the can, in the whatever, okay, and are visiting again. So great to have you here, brother. Thanks for coming on.
Great to be on, man. Thanks for having me back. I'm excited to dive in. I've been pumped for this conversation for a long time, by the way.
Good. Yeah, gonna get into it big time.
Yeah.
So last time that I'm going to start off with this because let's just go into the deep waters. Last time that we were together, Sterling and I met in Denver, and which is where he lives. I was there because my dad had been life flighted to a hospital there and was getting like a feeding tube put in and was not in good shape. And I was like, while I'm here, I'm going to talk to Sterling because we had been talking about doing that. That ended up great. Dad made a big recovery from that whole thing with a lot of TLC. I spent, I think, 2 weeks or something up there with him. And my stepmom, of course, was there by his side the entire time. And he made like a big recovery, and he made it to our wedding in October, which was awesome that he was able to be there. Like really just so cool. And then, he just passed away, March 8th. So, God, it's been 2 months. Just time flies, which, has been really challenging. For me, it's just sort of like waves of grief, and I keep acknowledging kind of the different ways that grief arises in me. Even like this morning and like yesterday, it's just all of a sudden I'm like really sad. And I'm like, oh yeah, Dad died, but just kind of allowing all of those feelings to come up, experiencing that discomfort intentionally. So maybe we could just talk about that. I think let's just start there, how to grieve in a way that really is fulfilling and I guess fulfilling is not the word that I want to use, but like honors the emotions that we are having as we are having them so that we can release them.
Yeah.
So what's your take there, muchacho?
I think the beautiful part about what you shared is it's not only honoring the emotions, but it's honoring him. Like one of the people that made you is no longer here. And to experience the grief that moves through you, losing that person, I think is an incredible tribute to them. And I think that it's incredibly important to not just remember all the good things and all the pictures and all the happy times, like do that for sure, right? Like there's, I'm sure, incredible positive memories that you have with him as well. But I think to deny the grief and the loss and the pain of him no longer being here is to deny, part of him in a way. So how you're doing it, I think is beautiful, and I honor you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I'm verklempt just talking about it. So, it's really, I really appreciate that. I think, I had one of my friends, a very dear friend of mine, sent me some a message that was related. There's a beatitude. I think it's a beatitude in the Bible. A beatitude in the Bible.
In the Bible, yeah.
That goes, blessed are those who mourn. And in the depths of that, it's kind of like, blessed are those who mourn the loss of the person. And then there's kind of some advice in there somewhere that's like, don't get caught up in going, well, what do I do now? What am I going to do now without this person, and get stuck in your own way? Like really just mourn the loss of the person that is gone. And, it's actually really helpful advice because we can go there. I mean, I know for like my stepmom, that's been something that I've been really like concerned about. And I feel like she's been handling really well. You know, I'll be there for her as time moves on, particularly after the funeral, which isn't until the end of June. But you know, there is that piece where it's like, what do I do now that this person who's been so influential in my life is gone, you know?
Yeah.
So,
well, when I think not grieving the loss of somebody like that, or for anybody listening of anything that you feel grief about, I think can start to direct our lives and our action in ways that we don't necessarily want. And I'm speaking as somebody that did it that way. My grandmother was one of the closest people to me in my life, and she passed away when I was 13. And I was sad at the time, but I didn't cry and I didn't express my grief. I felt, you know, I'm the oldest sibling in my family. I felt like I had to be strong and kind of lead the way and, you know, be that resilience in a non-mourning kind of way. And for years after that, I knew I was sad. But what I didn't understand is why I was so addicted to working all the time. Like it felt like I had to work all the time, even when I didn't have to work. Like on vacation, I felt like I was doing something wrong, especially in the moments of quiet, of solitude. I would just resort to doing some kind of work at an addictive level. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I realized, in a plant medicine ceremony, actually, that I had not grieved her loss, and I was avoiding that pain by working. My addiction to work was because I was avoiding the pain of my grandmother dying all those years ago.
wow.
And at that point, experiencing the grief, the loss, the suffering. I don't know how it's been for you, Geoff, but at that point, I felt like it was so much grief, it was like going to break me. It felt like my body was not able to hold that level of sorrow. But I expressed it, it came through me, and I'm not addicted to working anymore. I work a lot, of course, but now have the autonomy to make the choice about working. It's not like I'm avoiding something. It's been incredibly transformative for me.
When did that happen? This transformation? Was that part of a ceremony or part of landmark, or do you remember the context?
Yeah, I was with an indigenous tribe called the Shipibo in the Peruvian Amazon, out literally in the middle of nowhere, totally off the grid, no power, no internet. And it was already driving me crazy because I'm like, I can't work here, right? Like I'm off the grid. Yeah. So it was kind of forcing me down that path of confronting something. And what's interesting about it is, as I'm in the ceremony with the Shipibo, which are incredibly beautiful ceremonies, I start to shake, and then I start to cry, and I don't know where this sadness is coming from. And it wasn't until I'm in the throes of it that I realized what I'm crying about. And it was like, oh, this is 20-year-old grief that I had never expressed. I had pushed it down, locked it away, and spent much of my time looking for ways to avoid it. And as sad and heartbreaking as that experience was, it was one of the most beautiful things I think I've ever done. And it felt, even when my grandmother was living, I didn't feel as close to her as I did in that moment. It was like she was there with me in that grief. It was incredible.
That's so cool. What a beautiful experience. Yeah, and I definitely feel like there's a, you know, in those medicine circles, there's a deeper connection to the spirits of those who have passed, however that manifests. I know for me, you know, there was a ceremony that we did. I've shared a little bit about this, but I'll go a little deeper. There was a ceremony that we did with my group about 2 weeks after he passed away, and I wrote a song for my dad that I sang to him actually while he was on his deathbed, I came up with the song kind of thing, which was a really beautiful way to mourn in the hour of his passing. He was still with us. He was just, comatose on the bed there.
Yeah.
But for sure could hear me. And so I sang this song in ceremony, and it like, there were just so many little things that were so beautiful. The person facilitating the ceremony was telling a story about Lourdes. Do you know about Lourdes in France? Okay, well, I'll share a little bit. Saint Teresa, I believe, of Lourdes. So yeah, in 1858 in Lourdes in France, there was this girl, Bernadette, who, couldn't read and write, who saw these visions of Mother Mary come to her.
I do know a little bit about this. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, said you need to dig here. And then a friend of hers also saw the visions of Mother Mary, and the message was like, you need to help her. So they started digging for 30 days, and they told people, and that they were, scorned about it. Like, oh, you're never going to see anything. Nothing's going to happen. And then at at the end of the 30 days, nothing happened. And then they were, they were laughing stock. And then the next day, this huge lake emerged with these incredibly healing waters. And there's been all of this documented miracles that have happened in those waters, and people walking again and like that. And, my father visited there, and my dad was always an atheist, really intelligent, intellectual man, very scientific, American reading kind of a dude,
Yeah.
And I remember he came back. So that my friend who's facilitated the ceremony was telling this story in the ceremony. And I raised my hand and shared, my dad visited there. And that was the moment where I'd never seen my dad ever talk passionately about God or spirituality or anything like that. And he was like, I just had this experience that was so in touch with spirit. And he was really moved.
Wow.
Like, he really came away from that experience believing in God. And then it got brought up in the ceremony randomly, and I was able to share about it. So that was really beautiful. And I definitely felt a deeper connection with him, in that ceremony, on that medicine. Wow. And also I cried so much during that. It's like for hours. I mean, I just sat there, and I'm sure you could relate, I just sat there and wept. And it was like there's such a profound acceptance in that. Now, of course, I'm not saying, you need to go do ayahuasca in order to experience grief. You can create that environment for yourself, but for me, it was profoundly helpful. And it allowed me to kind of take this big weight that had been on my chest off, and express it. And like, wow, it's like, the image that comes to mind is, you just have like a full heart. There's like a bunch of, crap in it. And then you just pull out the stopper at the bottom, and it just drains out, you clean it out.
Right.
And it did feel like that. And, it's still I have like waves, I'm sure, when the final funeral happens, I'm sure I'll go through a lot then as well. And I mean, even this morning and yesterday, I was just like, all of a sudden I was like sad, and I was like, well, what's going on? It's definitely, that's what's going on for me.
Yeah. And I don't know if that ever ends, and certainly it'll be less frequent and so on. But I even notice now there are points where, like, just my grandmother will come to mind, and I'll tear up in the middle of, I don't know, flying somewhere, right? Like in totally disconnected situations. Something about whatever I'm experiencing touches me, and it, like, I feel those waves of grief. And like I said, I don't know if those ever stop, but I do think that as we continue to be open to those things, it gives us a depth, a wisdom, and appreciation for our own limited humanity that just like transcends the ages in some way, you know, like keeps us connected with what is, which is not permanent.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really beautiful what you're saying right now. I totally agree with that. And I think, you know, as you pointed out, you know, stifling that, which is our tendency, is to like stifle that, ignore it, get back to work, you know, do your thing, stiff upper lip, still, you know, like put a smile on it, ignore it. That just doesn't work at all. I mean, it's like, you're just going to give yourself disease, really. Like you could actually give yourself disease from doing that, or foster addictions. In your case, you were productive. It was a productive addiction, but still an addiction nonetheless that was costing you things.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some Norwegian research that found that avoiding, denying, or surviving discomfort, I call those like the discomfort defaults, just natural ways, at least in modernity, that we deal with discomfort, right? We push it away, we deny it, we pretend it's not happening. We kind of, like you said, get that stiff upper lip and say, oh yeah, everything's fine. Well, it turns out when we do that, it leaves us, according to the research, not unwilling, but unable to act in accordance with the knowledge that we already have. So that means, like, I know what to do. I know I don't need to work all the time, but discomfort stops you, or it drives you to do things that you don't want to do, or at least you don't have autonomy over choosing to do.
That's fascinating. So it's because of the fact that I'm actively ignoring this huge thing in my life that's like
probably
this
unconsciously
thing of grandma or dad. Right. Probably unconsciously, but maybe partially like, I don't want to look at that, you know, like you made a choice with your sister. You're like, I'm going to keep I'm going to be the resilient one.
Yeah.
You didn't realize at the time what that would cost you, but like the fact that we're ignoring these things, it just creates a space that doesn't allow us to do what we know to do, because we're still, so I know I need to stop working so much or stop drinking or whatever it is that I'm using to gloss over it. I know I need to do that. The call is strong, but I can't, because I won't allow myself to feel the thing that's causing it in the first place.
Right. So I maintain that addiction to comfort, and I sacrifice not only some of the like tangible results that we might want, but we sacrifice the joy and happiness as well. You can't selectively numb. Yeah.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. So then you just kind of go into zombie mode and you're just moving through life. Which, you know, by the way, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, that's me, it's okay. We've all been there, you know, it's not, there's nothing wrong with being a zombie or recognizing that you're in that state. You know, what there is to do is just look internally, what's in my heart, what's weighing on me, and create a space where you can express that for yourself, you know, honorably, either by yourself or with other people that are going to support you. But yeah, that's certainly our message here. And, you know, you also pointed to the impermanence factor. I think that's something that has definitely shifted for me. Like, Christine and I went to see Perungi in concert last night. Are you familiar with Perungi?
I'm not. It sounds awesome though.
He is a person. He's a musician. It's hard to explain what it is that he does. Certainly you can look him up online.
I'm going to Google that afterwards.
He's amazing. His music is absolutely phenomenal. He's just such a genius. Every time I see him, it just blows my mind. You will have an experience like you're on medicine without any medicine, just being at his show. He basically has all of these instruments set up on the stage, and then he plays them, and he has a loop, and he loops them. But the whole thing is like a prayer. It's like a ceremony.
Wow.
And he's creating it in the moment. It's all improvised, but he's so good at all these different instruments. And then he has a facilitator, this woman, Ashley, who I think her name is Ashley, who's incredible. She'll just come in and speak and say things and guide you like feel your feet on the earth and you're deepening into the planet. And it's just such a beautiful, honoring experience. And it was very cleansing. He really like created this vibe in the room that just everybody felt, that was incredibly cleansing and purifying for all of us. And he was honoring all the elements, and, and I had the experience during it where I was just like, okay, this is like just of impermanence in the way that, life is short. And here I am at this concert, and I'm really enjoying this concert. And even though part of me is like, oh yeah, this is like something that you would just do on a Thursday night or Wednesday night. What's today? Yeah, Thursday night.
Yeah.
It's a passing thing. Like, no, life is so permanent. Life goes so fast that, this is like a highlight moment for me. But all moments are like that. Like, it just, something clicked about that. And it's related to that my dad is dead.
Sure.
Because he's gone, and I think, and what the effect of that level of recognition of impermanence is, then I value what's in front of me so much more. I feel like, when you're really looking straight into the eye of the abyss of the impermanence of life, there's two options. You give up or you go hard, or not go hard, but like you give up, you say, whatever, it's not worth it. Or yeah, you go in, you go deeper. How do I really milk this beautiful experience that I'm having that I know will be gone? How do I actively love my life more? How do I be a contribution versus being a complaint?
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to chat with you a little bit there too.
Yeah. There's something about those like inspiring, transcendent moments that I think we need. And need at a very human level. I mean, it's so easy to get caught up in the knowledge of everything. Yeah, I've got to send these emails and these text messages and go to these websites and do these things. And I got to be this way and this thing. And, you got a to-do list 1,000,000 miles long. And there's so much knowledge there. It's easy to get trapped by it or stuck in it. And those transcendent experiences, there's something about them that elevates us in a visceral level above knowledge. And it connects us with almost like a knowing that there's something beyond knowing, and gives us a connection to the spirit, the divine, something beyond, or just call it inspiration. Though it's kind of interesting that it's in spirit, in inspiration. That really frees you from knowledge, like getting stuck in that knowledge trap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And truly actually being present and living.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really beautiful.
Yeah. Well, we talked about on our last podcast, that thing my mom said, the way out is through. Yeah. And I think that's the choice we're confronted with when we see the abyss. Like it shows up in different ways. A new job or a new relationship or a new living situation, right? Like we see the unknown in tangible ways when our environment changes or something changes around us. But really, tomorrow's not promised to any of us at any level. That unknown is literally right here in front of us, second by second. And we don't know what's going to happen in those moments. And that's the abyss. It's right there, and we can make that choice to avoid it, deny it, or survive it. Or we can go through those things, confront the unknown, confront the fear, the anger, the grief, that whatever might be there. And I think by doing that, it frees you of it in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. And I think, there's something beautiful in knowing that it's temporary. There's something that's just makes it more beautiful. Man, I'm not going to see the world this way in this moment ever again. This is just right now. There's something beautiful from a consciousness perspective as well, because it's like knowing that, accepting that, and then, loving it even more because of the fact that it's impermanent just is so empowering and gratifying to me as the person in the experience.
Yeah. And I think, as great as degrees and books and all the knowledge is, and I'm not dismissing any of that stuff. It's incredibly important. But I think what you're pointing to is real wisdom, like a depth of appreciation for the impermanence of things and how to look at those around you, the world, and even ourselves in a way that really appreciates the temporality of the moment. It's just now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, the tendency is so much to just ignore things. I was speaking with Autumn Reeser, my a good friend of mine, about ignorance, in another episode.
Yeah.
And just how, that's what we're doing. And there's part of it that's like, we're designed that way, right? I mean, if we weren't able to ignore all these things, then we wouldn't really be able to function because there's so much information coming at us all the time. You talk about this in your book.
Yeah.
But then also we just choose to ignore the things that are uncomfortable, that we're scared of. That's part of our culture. Don't talk about it. Don't communicate about it. Just shut up and look good. Okay. Right. It's like that.
Yeah.
It's like that. Don't have the tantrum that you really want to have when you want to have the tantrum. Yeah. Or cry when you really want to cry because you need to cry because it's there for you. Don't do that. Ignore it and then bottle it up. And then that's where we just get all fucked up. That's where it all just gets bottled up and we get off track.
Yeah.
Then it's so hard to right ourselves and get ourselves back on track. But that's part of the culture. It's almost, what you stand for and what you talk about, hunting discomfort. It's a very revolutionary act in terms of what most of society is doing. Saying, okay, you know what? Oh, this is uncomfortable. Now I'm really going to experience the discomfort.
Yeah. Well, that's a modern development. I mean, back in the caveman days, discomfort was driving our survival and it was telling us something that we needed to act on. If I've got the discomfort of being hungry, well, I better go pick some berries or go hunting or I'm going to die. Or if I've got the discomfort of fear, well, I've got to build a shelter or something to protect myself from all the saber-toothed tigers and whatever else was roaming around those days. What modernity has afforded us is the luxury of being able not to deal with the source of that discomfort, right? If I'm not on this podcast or not on a Zoom, or if I don't have that tough conversation, or if I don't grieve my grandmother, my life is not literally at stake. Right? I have the luxury of not having to deal with discomfort. And for whatever reason, society, many people in society anyways, look at discomfort as something that's bad and wrong. And why do I have this anger or this grief or this anxiety? Forgetting that is telling you something. There is information there that you can go into that you may need to act upon. And when you do those things, I promise you, that not only is it going to unstick you if you feel stuck, but it's going to give you a vitality and a freedom to achieve the things that you want to achieve and have the kind of joy and happiness in your life that maybe you want to have.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great. Yeah, it's worth the burn now. It's worth digging deep into it now versus, letting it go. Yeah.
Right. I don't know where we got off thinking like, oh, I can skip out on discomfort. Yeah. It's crazy. There's only two kinds of people that don't experience discomfort, and they're either dead or they're not born yet, right?
Yeah.
The only choice that we get is
amazing.
The only thing that we can do is choose how we're going to deal with it, and just placating it and putting it off and ignoring it and trying to survive it actually means that you're going to live with it longer. That's why I mean hunting discomfort. I'm not saying live an uncomfortable life. I'm saying hunt it, get to the source of it, solve what that discomfort is telling you, or release what that discomfort is telling you. And then all the great things, the joy, the happiness, the comfort, real comfort, and maybe more importantly, peace start to arise.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's like, no, I know that I'm going to experience some pain from delving into the grief. I know it's not going to be fun. Like with my dad, I know I'm not going to enjoy crying my face off, and experiencing being inconsolable. I know that that's not going to be fun, but I also know that on the other side of that, I'll have such an appreciation for my life and the contribution that my father was and is continuing to be for me, that it's absolutely worth it. And that's with so many things. I mean, that's a big thing. Dad died, right? But little tiny things as well, all the little things that annoy us. Just go for the experience of fully embracing the annoyance, and then that allows it to release. Versus, as you're saying, numbing yourself, and that's I feel like that's so much of the culture. Numb yourself with alcohol or opiates or drugs or whatever, or anti-anxiety medicines, or all the things that we can prescribe against actually being human.
Right.
Yeah. But then the result is a bunch of people, just zombies walking around, just staring at their phones, walking around,
Yeah. Without the results that they want, without the kind of connection that they want. I'm present to this quote from Carl Jung, arguably the father of modern psychology, said, "We cannot change anything until we accept it." Condemnation about anything, the traffic, your work schedule, your emails, your significant other, your father passing, condemnation about anything does not liberate. It oppresses, and it makes it very hard, I would even say impossible, to do much else.
Yeah. Condemning anything that we won't accept. We don't want to accept the dad died. We don't want to accept that we didn't get 49 likes on our Instagram post. We don't want to accept it, so we condemn it, right?
Yeah.
And then that leads to our own oppression.
And I think that condemnation happens certainly externally, right? Here's all these factors in the world that I don't like. I don't like the war in Europe. I don't like inflation. I don't like the looming depression. I don't like the cost increases in my business. I don't like all these things. And yes, that's one aspect of it. But there's also those things inside of yourself, I don't like these ways of my thinking, being, and acting. And when we talk about condemnation of what is, we're talking about that external world, but we're also talking about those things that you might be condemning about yourself. And it really is an acceptance of both and all of those things that's important. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly. And that's the hardest
hard part.
Nugget to crack. And, as far as the love operating system, right? Asking myself, well, how do I love more?
Yeah.
The primary piece there is, well, how do I love myself more? How do I accept myself and who I am? If I'm asking, how do I love my life more? Well, that's great. And it for sure answers will come to me. Be more passionate about what it is that you really care about, music, dialogue, etc. But also, how do I love myself more? How do I really accept and forgive myself more for the mistakes that I have made, so that I can start anew in this moment right now?
Yeah.
Certainly that has come up with me, with my dad, I did not achieve the level of success that I wanted to achieve before my dad left the building. And that's that, I'm on the path. I'm doing great. I'm creating a lot of things. I do feel that I am successful. I'm acting accordingly. He got to see me get married, etc. But as far as the achievements that I know that I'm here to make, that I will be making in the future based on what I'm putting out, he didn't get to see that. So then there's a failure in that for me. I feel like I failed.
Yeah.
How do I accept that? Okay. That's cool, man. I get it. Dad didn't get to see that. He's going to see it. He's with me now, There's also just I think part of that whole thing is well, how do I love myself for the failures that for the condemnations that I have given myself. I've condemned myself for not, being in front of 100,000 people or whatever, playing for a huge arena audience somewhere. That doesn't get me anywhere.
Well, to your point, there's a softening and opening that it requires to accept that. And I was just listening to, do you know Dr. Gabor Mate or know of him?
I've heard the name.
Does incredible work around grief and addiction. I believe he's a trained psychologist, certainly a doctor. But he was saying something the other day that really resonated with me. He said, things in the world that are living don't grow from a place of strength. They grow from a place of vulnerability. A lobster has to shed its hard shell, its hard protective shell, in order to molt and to grow into a larger lobster. A tree has to expose kind of that vulnerable green to extend another shoot from a branch. And humans are the same way. We've got to open, we've got to soften, we need to open to a real vulnerability in order to grow. If we're always going around with that stiff upper lip and pretending everything's okay when it's not, we're actually we're not acting in accordance with the ways that the world and humanity works. Yeah.
And that's so fascinating. And therein lies, there's such a strength in vulnerability and a necessity in vulnerability. And there's no avoiding vulnerability. You're going to experience it at some point.
Right.
You can't get around it.
Right.
So might as well just embrace it.
One of the things that I saw as a recovering perfectionist, I said another way, somebody that avoids vulnerability or looking bad in any way, is it started to look like, have you ever gone rock climbing?
Yeah.
So in rock climbing, you grab onto the pieces of the rocks that are exposed where you can get a finger hold or a toe hold and you can pull yourselves up. Well, I think feigning a life or a business of perfection is, for somebody else to connect with that, is like trying to climb a sheer granite face. It's just entirely smooth. There's nothing to grab onto. Looks beautiful, maybe as a countertop, but there's nothing to grab onto. There's no humanity. There's no depth. There's no place to connect. When you show some of those more vulnerable aspects, it's like the toe holds on the imperfect rock wall where we can connect in a new way. And those around us have places to connect with us on a deep level, because at the end of the day, we're all human. We're all going to go through grief and loss and suffering and anger. And when we expose some of those things, I'm not saying go into a temper tantrum in your next board meeting, but when we expose some of those things, especially the people that we're closest to, it actually enables them to get closer with us to get closer with them, and kind of broaden this connection to what is and the impermanence of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, Dalai Lama talks a lot about that. I'm reading this, the Book of Joy, which is Desmond Tutu talking to Dalai Lama. So beautiful. But they get into that a lot, where it's like, that's where our shared human interest, that's how we know that we are totally interconnected, is, that we're able to continue to have compassion. We were just reading about Christine, my wife, and I, Christine, sorry.
Of course.
Sterling and Christine and I are old friends.
Way back.
Way back. So she was reading, about the Dalai Lama was talking about all of these monks that when he, fled Tibet, were put in gulags in China, and like really terribly awful gulags, like the worst of the worst. They combined all of the different torture things that the Russians were doing with the Chinese were doing, and like whatever. It was just absolutely awful. And one of the monks that the Dalai Lama talked to afterwards was like, I was really I was really in danger so many times of losing my compassion for the guards that were guarding me. And that was his main concern. And he survived. Only 20 people survived this prison where hundreds of people were put in. He was one of the survivors. But that was his main concern, was like how I want to maintain my sense of compassion, because that's their tradition. Unreal. That's their lineage. That's their goal. It's so beautiful that he was looking. I mean, Viktor Frankl, same thing, man. Search for meaning. He was in the concentration camp, and that was also part of his things. He was looking at it from like, how do I survive this? But he also was looking at it from a compassionate perspective. How did these people come to this conclusion that this was the right thing to do? I just think that's so, opening yourself to that level of vulnerability allows me to see our interconnectedness in a way that then gives me so much more purpose, and actually makes me feel so less alone in the world, because then I know that I'm related to all of this and all of, everybody, and you. Yeah. And,
well, and I think, on one hand, part of me is like, how could you find compassion for the people that are locking you up and torturing you? Right? Like, as a human being, that seems, in the scale of things that are difficult to do, that's really, really high on the list. And the other part of me looks at it and say, that's the work for all of us. Hopefully people listening to this aren't locked up somewhere in some like catastrophic situation. But we have those moments of discomfort, the situations we don't like. I'm not making enough money. This relationship's not working. My kid's doing this and I don't like that, or they've got different beliefs than I do. But it really is that same kind of thing that you're pointing to with the monks, of kind of summoning that inspiration, that openness, that connection with something higher. It's bringing those infinite feelings, love, joy, peace, gratitude, into the moments of discomfort and the moments of uncertainty that transform those moments. And I don't know the story, but I think that practice probably had something to do with how and why he survived. Maybe not on this plane, but maybe on another plane.
100%. I mean, Viktor Frankl, I think that monk survived because of that, because that was his chief concern, for sure. Viktor Frankl talks about that explicitly. He was like, if I didn't flip the switch and start looking at myself as a human experiment on how much torture I could possibly survive, right? That was the purpose, right? He changed the context. He was like, I would have been dead. And he gives solid examples of like, I would have went in this line instead of that line, and then that would have killed me. He became valuable to them. Yeah. And so then he survived, but it was really a function of that he changed his context. And for sure, I think also with the monk, it was that he chose to become compassionate. Yeah.
In a way, that's hunting discomfort, at least how we're talking about it here. It's taking the uncomfortable path. Like, it would have been easy to shut down and be resigned and angry and hate those people, and nobody would have blamed them. Nobody.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, that's very natural. But at the same time, they took the path that was harder. Maybe not externally harder, but certainly internally, to find love and forgiveness and peace, and open themselves up to something that is beyond my capacity to understand in terms of difficult things. And yet they chose that path. And I think it's really beautiful to see that happen. And in those two cases, how they play out, right? How their lives grow from those rock bottoms of rock bottoms.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're enjoying this program, if you love Lunacy, please consider becoming part of our team. Go to patreon.com/Lunacy podcast to become a member of our team. You can choose a number of different levels to support us on a monthly basis so that we can continue the work of exploring the love operating system, how best to be of service, and how to live life to the fullest. Thank you so much for your support. Much love, everybody. Yeah, it's interesting. I think as we're talking about this, I feel like vulnerability is on the rise as a cultural phenomenon. I mean, here we are having this discussion. I know my friend Neil Brennan has a show that's called Blocks. He's a comedian. And so he interviews all these people, and the whole premise is like, what's blocking you in life? He talks to David Letterman about it. David Letterman's like, what? We don't talk about that. But it's so beautiful that he brings it up because it's what needs to be discussed. And it really showcases, our shared humanity and allows us to feel and be more. And it's such a beautiful thing. Like I just really commend him for doing that. And I think it's so beautiful that that's becoming more of a normative practice. And also, sometimes I have a concern where it's like, well, what if they're faking it, But
I think that's on the rise too, actually.
It might be people are faking more vulnerability. That's true. And that it's inauthentic. But there's part of me that's like, yeah, but you can't really fake it if it's really truly vulnerable. Right. You can't really truly fake vulnerability. Ultimately.
No, but
we'll see through it.
You can use words that point to vulnerability. And I think some of the people doing it, maybe some are doing it maliciously or intentionally, or just trying to bait people into whatever it is that they're doing. But I think others, speaking as, kind of patient zero on this, that don't really know how to be vulnerable. And so just copy some of the language of the people they hear are vulnerable. And what you're pointing to, I think, is an really important distinction between the words of vulnerability and actually being vulnerable. Those are different things. And what we're talking about here is the act of vulnerability, not the language of. And having that separate for yourself and really, I'm speaking to anybody that has some trouble with vulnerability like myself, assessing, hey, whatever words you're using, are you truly opening yourself? Are you willingly exposing a piece of your heart or your soul to who's ever in front of you or a camera or whatever else? And if the answer is then yes, then you're at least on the right track.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's really great. I know for me, I've chosen kind of a vulnerable path in life as a musician and acting and all that stuff is this very vulnerable, exposed path. And so, and for me, so it's like, and I'm somewhat, for whatever reason, just who I am, the personality type that I am, like I like that. I like the vulnerability. I like to truly feel alive. I'm into that. But I'm also always looking at like, how do I, when I'm performing particularly, like I'm always thinking, I'm not always thinking, but I strive to think, how do I open my heart even more and expose even more of my love through this song, or like whatever the song is about, my passion for the song. It's a different take, but I feel like that, if you really start getting into vulnerability and really appreciating your life and being present and allowing yourself to feel the exposure and the impermanence of that, then that's when you really gain access to just feeling like you're truly living. For me anyway, that's what it feels like. And I'm not always doing that, but when I am, I'm feeling great.
Yeah. One of my friends and mentors, Richard Condon, who maybe I've been doing some work with him lately, and he talks about something that he calls...
I should have him on the show.
You should. He's partnered up with Jeff Wilmore. Maybe you know him as well. But they've got some incredible learning and teaching, and I'm grateful to be a part of it. But they've crafted a methodology to point to, again, what they call your calling. Or how would you give language to those moments of connection with spirit or the moments that you're inspired? And as you can give some language to it and say, hey, my calling is, that at least gives you some access and a reminder to connect with those things. And I use it on a daily, multiple times a day basis.
Okay. How does that go? So you say to yourself, my calling is, can you give me an example?
Well, my calling is people live courageously no matter what.
Okay.
Now,
wow.
The words of
Glad I
that
asked.
aren't that important. All the words are is they point to a world of experience that's moving to me, that's inspiring to me. When I really get connected to it, brings tears to my eyes when I think about the courage of my grandmother passing, what it took for her to look me in the eye and say, I love you, moments before she died. Or the moments that I've had to summon courage for myself. When that language points to that world of experience and connects me with that inspiration in a way that has become like a North Star. It's what I'm here to do. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, that makes great sense. That's beautiful. Really distilling what you're up to in just a short phrase like that. My calling is, what's my calling?
Yeah. And by the way, I know you have a number of entrepreneurs and business people. You've got all sorts of people listening to this, but for anybody in a professional world of any sort, that North Star, your calling, should be the North Star of your business as well. Maybe should's the wrong word. I think we've got the opportunity for it to be the North Star in business.
Could be.
So often we're looking back into the past for what we can fix, we can change, we can adjust. Now I'm speaking to anybody, right? Not just business, right? I'm looking into the past for what I can do a little bit better, a little bit differently, a little bit more, instead of connecting with inspiration, something that calls me forward, that isn't just a better version of something that's already been, but something that's truly unique and truly different and a change from what always has been into a world of, well, what could be?
Yeah, that's really interesting. You know, you bring that up. I keep thinking about this conversation that I've been having with Christine, you know, and she's like, look, I really feel like what you're doing with your podcast could save somebody's life. You know, somebody could listen to it who's down in a rut and thinking whatever bad thoughts. And then they might be like, oh, wait, I got something out of a discussion that, you know, that Geoff had with Sterling Hawkins, you know, where they're talking about something. And, you know, she says it and I'm like, it takes me aback because I'm like, really? That doesn't seem like, you know, I don't think of it with pride, but if I think of it with like, oh, that might be accurate. That could actually be accurate. Somebody could have an experience of listening to a couple of your shows and be like, you know what? I'm seeing greater purpose in my life. And I was really going down a bad direction. And now I am, you know, discovering how it is that I can love more in my life, you know, how I can be more of service in my life. And, totally, you know, that's something that drives me. I don't know if it's, you know, my calling is how to help people discover their true purpose. But there's something in there. I'm going to have to get back to you on it. What my calling is.
We'll debrief about it
it's
sometime.
True anyway.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, to that point, I invite you and all of us, myself included, to really take that potential impact in. You know, the ripple effects of anything that we do are far beyond anything that we'll ever be able to really see. And I'm with you. I get, you know, notes from people after a keynote or a workshop or something saying things that are really quite moving. And even when I hear it directly from them, I'm like, wait, really? You got that from me? And there's this opportunity for all of us to embrace the tremendous, profound impact that we can make with our being and with our words at Starbucks, at work, or at home. Yeah. Especially if your goal is to be of service, which I think
I mean, that's part of the trick, right? It's like, we all want to look good and be right at all costs.
Right.
And so we're looking at, well, how do I get the things that are going to make me look good, win the awards or whatever and all that shit. But that's not really, there's no juice in that. And really, you're not going to win the awards if you're just concerned about how do I look. It's how do I be of service? How am I of service to other people? You're a motivational speaker. You're a keynote speaker to people to get them motivated. I'm a musician, performing songs to really get people in touch with their heart and their true nature, their true self,
Well,
in service.
In service. Yeah. Truth be told, I don't like the term motivational speaker. It's the category of things that I fit in. But motivation is getting yourself or somebody else to do something you don't really want to do. My intention is actually very similar to yours, to truly inspire, to light that fire inside of somebody where they don't feel like they have to do something, but they want to do something. They're moved in a different way,
Right. Yeah. That's beautiful. Really well put. Yeah. And it's also like looking at, well, what really does inspire me? Maybe I'm not doing the thing that I really want to do. I have a good friend of mine who's just graduated from college.
Yeah.
And the degree that he got does not really, it's not really inspiring to him. He's done. Yeah. He got his degree and that's great. But what he really wants to do is be a writer, and do music and other things. And so it's about, well, how do you give yourself the confidence and just feel like, okay, I know that's what drives me. So what's the path to get there? How do I achieve that goal? And how do I start following? And then that builds its own momentum, because it's like, once you start answering your calling, then there's this fire that gets built that is unlike anything else in life. It's just really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And if can I tweak that just a little bit? Do you mind?
Tweak away, man.
Well, I think there's a danger to externalizing inspiration. And no doubt, if I'm at one of your concerts, or, I'm watching something really beautiful, or with somebody that I love, I might find inspiration there. But the source of inspiration is coming from me. I'm not dependent on the external world for inspiration. It comes from me. I'm generative of that. And as we can connect with that generative inspiration, we connect with that feeling on a regular basis, that's going to cause us to act and pursue different pathways that's more aligned with your calling, your authentic self, that's more aligned with what you truly want.
Yeah, better said. Nice. Yeah, that's great. And I do want to, I want to pivot just a little bit into the no matter what realm, because I had a really big win yesterday, and I want to share it with you.
Yeah, please.
I think I've mentioned to you, they were trying to open this gold mine up here in Grass Valley. So, and that would be tremendously detrimental to the environment. There's a whole slew of problems with it. It would create asbestos in the air. It would create toxic waste on the land. They would literally be draining the wells of hundreds of residents. And also then the wastewater from all that would cause calamity. And, I really got passionate about it. I wrote a song called Wells Run Dry. I did a music video
it's a beautiful song. I've seen it online. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And I got local people to come do a flash mob with me in Robinson Plaza in the center of Nevada City. I promoted it a lot. I've done 4 podcast episodes about the mine with different guests. Yeah. I've really been pushing for it. And yesterday was the meeting, the big meeting, the Nevada County Planning Commission meeting. And yesterday and the day before, Wednesday and Thursday. And it was, so many people, 600 people showed up to protest mostly. There were a few people in support of the mine, but And I got up. I'm actually going to show you a little clip, I think, here of me getting up to sing my song to the Board of Supervisors and to Ben Mossman. And I'm going to show you. So let's see if I could do that. If you're not watching this, folks, you can watch it on YouTube, on Geoff Eido YouTube channel. But anyway, you'll be able to hear it nonetheless. Oh, there we go. That's me. This guy behind me, the guy behind me where the guitar head is pointing, that's Ben Mossman. He's the CEO of Rise Gold.
It gives me great faith that you, who have dedicated so much of your lives in service to this community to protect us, have already discovered 2 lies that this company has told. 1, regarding where educational tax revenues will go, and 2, regarding how much waste will be created on a daily basis by Rise Gold and their endeavors. Given the enormity of evidence presented here by the citizenry, I trust that you will vote no on the FEIR and on this project. Following is how the majority of Nevada County feels about this project.
You might say your mining claim is what everybody needs. Beneath your lying promises is the heart of your creed. We won't let you slip it into the ground beneath our feet. Rape our land of treasures that our people sorely need. Wells run dry and the people are thirsty. Wells run dry and the people awake. Wells run dry and the people are thirsty. Wells run dry and the people awake. Wells run dry and the people are thirsty. Wells run dry and the people awake. Wells run dry and the people are thirsty. Wells run dry and the people awake. Won't you please do us the decency of not pretending like you care, while you fill our space with toxic waste and contaminate our air. Rivers have no memory of poison in their veins. We will fight for every drop till you abandon all your claims. Wells run dry and the people are thirsty. Wells run dry and the people awake. Wells run dry and the people are thirsty. Wells run dry and the people awake. Well, it's time to put the planet back to the place where it belongs. Sacred, righteous architect of each and every song. Take dominion, exploitation, and greed without remorse. Bring harmony and dignity and honoring our songs. Wells run dry and the people are thirsty. Wells run dry and the people awake. Wells run dry and the people are thirsty. Wells run dry and the people awake. Wells run dry and the people are thirsty. Wells run dry and the people awake. Wells run dry and the people are thirsty. Wells run dry and the people awake. Wells run dry and the people are thirsty. Wells run dry and the people awake. Wells run dry and the people are thirsty. Wells run dry and the people awake. Thank you.
Geoff, thank you for presenting on key.
Cheers.
It's awesome.
So this guy in the background, Ben Mossman, I kept looking at him, because the song is about him. He would not engage eye contact with me, which was sort of gratifying, in a way. But
yeah. So how did they vote? They voted no? Is that
They voted no on all counts.
Nice.
And
well, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I really, it's really like, I wanted to bring it up because you're no matter what. And it was really like a big, no matter what, they're not going to put this mine for me. It was really big, like over my dead body, no matter what, this is not going to happen. I put a lot of effort into it, including that performance. I also did one at the previous meeting that they had as well. But I know for a fact that it made a difference. I know that the podcast made a difference because people came up and asked me about it. And I know for a fact the song made a difference because a good friend of mine from the No Mine movement, my friend Joan has a very conservative friend who she was really trying to convince, hey, this mine is a bad idea. Look at all the facts and figures, behind it. And he was not having any of it. And then she showed him my music video and he changed his mind.
Wow.
Like he went from being pro mine. to Against the Mine because of the video.
That's so cool. And it's not just your commitment. I mean, the commitment is huge, it's important, it's necessary. But what's really cool about it too, Geoff, and undoubtedly connected to your success with it, is the inspiration that you're bringing to it, the heart and soul you're bringing to it, like playing that song in the middle of their meeting.
Yeah.
Like that's what shifts. You know, you shift the spirit of something at its core, and you're no longer fighting something, but you're providing an opportunity or pathway to something that just is better. Better's the wrong word. That is good. Let me say that. That is good.
Yeah, I think, for me, there's sort of just an acknowledgement of the nobility of the earth. And for sure, that song is very much connected to, how do we honor the planet? How do we it's time to put the planet back to the place where it belongs, the sacred, righteous architect of each and every song. Take dominion, exploitation, and greed without remorse. Bring harmony and dignity and honoring our source. I really feel like that's, that message, like when I wrote the song, came through so quickly and powerfully. It was really just like, this is what matters. And I have to say, really, I obviously, cool. I'm not taking credit for the fact that they said no. Okay. I'm just a part of a huge movement. But the fact that I know that I am part of that movement and that I made a difference, really, like, it just is so gratifying to me to have that win. And to also know that, because of what we did as a group, as a community, we're saving this part of our planet. Yeah, we did something that really matters. And, it's we took a stand for the earth and we won. And it's really like, God only knows. It was one of those, this whole thing was like an event where I was like, okay, first of all, we just moved here and spent our entire life savings getting here and everything. So then the prospect of potentially spoiling this paradise with contaminants and et cetera, cancer causing agents, et cetera, like was not appealing. But sure. Looking towards future generations after I'm gone, what's going to be the effect of this? Because the mines that were up here previously, they're still cleaning up hundreds of years later. There's toxic, you can't go in the creek, Wolf Creek, because of, a previous mine spill. So to know that we did something for future generations too is really, really gratifying.
That's awesome. Gives me goosebumps. I mean, congratulations on that. That's a real win for you and the community there. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know when this happened, but a lot of business especially has become very self-centered, where they're just going after things that they know don't serve people, where, they're selling food that's terrible for you or disrupting the environment in ways that they know are damaging, or selling you products that everybody knows you don't need, right? There's been a disconnection from what's ultimately important from all of us as human beings. And as we can get connected more to that, I think that creates not only a better world, but a better future for all of us, or a good future for all of us. One that's not just a little bit better than the past, or, trying to fix and change and prevent and achieve, but one that starts to be more truly aligned with the important things, and maybe even something higher than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's, I hope that this trend is building, where we're recognizing the selfishness of our actions and how our companies and our endeavors are affecting the planet. I feel like it is. And I feel like it's also, continue to have conversations like this where we're really looking at, well, what does the whole need? What does humanity need to survive? And how do we honor our source and where we come from, and really like build that? How do we turn the ship around? Because it's, it seems incontrovertible that we're potentially ruining this beautiful planet, this life that we have, and the planet, the whole sphere.
Yeah.
It seems very likely that that's happening. So there's an imperative there, right? Like we really have to, or, who knows what's going to happen. But then there's also the opportunity of that. And I think that's the beauty of it, is the opportunity of seeing beyond my own needs or the needs of my company or the basic just greed-based kind of fear-based operating system, the scarcity. Seeing beyond that, then that opens up such a beautiful world of purpose and heart and love that we can have by taking a stand for the planet, what we really believe in.
Yeah. A friend of mine just told me something right along the lines of that. She said, any choices or decisions that you make out of fear or out of need are typically wrong. And I'm like thinking about that. I'm like, I think that's right. Like any choices that I made when I really needed something weren't really the right choices because I'm making them out of fear or survival of not having. And you're right, at least from where I sit, I do feel like something incredibly beautiful and powerful is emerging for all of us. I can't exactly tell you what that is, but it feels like a positive shift is happening.
Yeah. And I also think, and I want to throw it back to you. I feel like, you've been doing bigger and more beautiful presentations to different companies. And,
thank you.
You're all about this in your conversation with them and really seeing the bigger picture and having purpose and, creating that, that stand, that context for people. I talked to Ron Weinrich recently. We did an episode about.
I haven't talked to him in forever. How is he?
He's okay. He's okay.
Yeah.
He's in Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And that episode, by the way, is well worth your listen.
Yeah.
But the conclusion, he talks in depth, very vulnerably about his whole experience with being a veteran in Israel.
Wow.
And his perspective on it. And there was part of me that was expecting him to be more optimistic. I don't know why. It's really messed up over there right now. And, as he puts it, like they live in a very bad neighborhood. But the conclusion that he came to is anybody who tells you that they have a plan for peace in the Middle East is full of it. They don't. Run. He was like, the only thing that I can see that works is personal development.
We changed the only world path by changing ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. It's personal development. And he said it, and at first I was like, really? That's it? Really? That's your answer? The more that I think about it, the more that I 100% believe in what he's saying. It's really the only way, is that if each of us start caring about ourselves and our own transformation, our own experience of life, loving life more, having more of a love operating system, really going after it no matter what, hunting discomfort, that actually is the change that will really transform the world, because we are in charge.
Yeah. Well, I started out a lot of my work and still continue a lot of my work around growth and innovation and company transformation. But what I'm talking about is not the latest technology or the latest tool, the new consultants that you have to bring in. It's about the people. It's the people that are going to innovate. Companies, communities, countries, the world will only change, will only grow as much as its leaders are willing to. I didn't think about it in the context of the Middle East, but it's just as true there, right? As we're willing to grow as individuals, that's what's going to power the growth, the positivity, the good things inside of whatever community you're a part of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. That's beautiful. So you told me that you have a hunting discomfort quiz, Sterling. And
I do.
I'd like to know more about that. What's the story?
Well, so there's a reason this is important. most of us build our lives and by extension, our business and everything to avoid, deny, or survive discomfort, right? And like we talked about, it oftentimes happens before we're really conscious of it and at younger ages. It really takes some digging to understand, well, what is that discomfort that I'm avoiding? You might have a sense of it, but what we found is that it's best to have a really short quiz, just 15 questions. It doesn't cost anything. I'm not selling anything here, but 15 questions to walk you through some different scenarios. And at the end of which it'll say which of the 5 major discomforts is most in your way. We all deal with all of them all the time, but there's one that's really rising to the top. And just as important, some steps about what to do about it. And everybody can check that out if they like at huntingdiscomfort.com.
Cool. I'm going to do it. That's amazing. I was thinking you were going to give me a quiz right now. You were going to start asking me questions, but
no, not right now. We'll leave it for people to check out personally. And, you know, if you'd like, I'd welcome anybody, yourself, anybody that's listening to this, to share it. Because as people can orient to their own discomfort, that's what's going to change them, which in turn is going to change their family, their community, their business, the country, and of course, even the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, I think not only, you know, share about the Hunting Discomfort quiz, but also share this episode. You know, if you have friends or family you think will benefit from this discussion, and or you just want to like open up you know, a line of dialogue where you can talk more about the things that are really uncomfortable with people that are in your life, you know, please share this episode. I think it's really like if you find that this podcast was helpful to you in any way or some way, then sharing it with other people is an act of service on your part. And so I highly encourage you, if you're called to do that, to please go ahead and share with others.
Yeah, please do. I've really enjoyed today, Geoff. Thanks for having me on. It's been an awesome conversation.
Oh, so I have to ask you the podcast question.
Oh yeah.
Is for you, Sterling, what is sacred and what is insane?
What is sacred and what is insane? Did I answer this on the last one? I'm like,
no, because I hadn't come up with it.
Oh, no, this is new.
This is the new question. Yeah.
I think what's sacred is in your heart, and what's insane is anything else.
Okay, that's good. Wow, that's great. That's the simplest answer that I've received. And
I'm going to have to go listen to some of the other answers. I'm very curious now.
Yeah, I should do like a montage of answers to that question.
That would be cool. That would be very cool.
Yeah, it would. That's beautiful. All right. Well, thank you so much, my brother. I really want to acknowledge you also for transforming your life. You know, when we met doing transformational work at Landmark many years ago. But certainly you weren't nearly at the level that you're at now with your career and what you're up to. And there were even some periods in our friendship where I know each of us was kind of floundering in a way. I just really want to acknowledge you and honor you for creating the life and the career that you have, and for really contributing to people, really making your life be about service and inspiring others, and getting them to discover their own heart and what really drives them. I really want to thank you for doing that, for me personally and for the rest of us.
Thank you. Received. I appreciate that. And I feel very much the same about you. Thank you for the podcast, the conversation, and the courage to do the kind of work that is hard, but is necessary to grow. So thank you.
Yeah, right on. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening, watching, whatever you're doing. If you want to support this podcast, become part of our team, go to patreon.com/Lunacy podcast. Lunacy is a creation of myself, Geoff Eido, with podcast management by Kimberly Joy Voice. Thank you so much. Much love, everybody.